99X and the Morning X. It's Barnes and Leslie. Now, this station came back a few years ago, and pretty much everybody, except Jimmy, who still wants to sell houses, but comes to visit us, and Sean Demery, who we lost a few years back. And a lot of this has been dedicated to him, including our studio.
Yes, we worked with Sean for many, many years. And for those of you that know, he passed away in 2017 from complications from a brainstem stroke.
And he had this thing called locked-in syndrome, I believe. I don't know if that's the official name, but you're about to find out. I'm about to introduce you to someone very special. His name is Jake Handel, and he is what's been called the Miracle Man. He is the only documented person to survive stage 4 acute toxic progressive, here we go as I try and say it, leukoencephalopathy, a rare brain disease that left him locked in, just like the thing that Sean Demery went through. Wasn't able to move, speak, or breathe on his own. He remained fully aware and retained all the feeling in his body. So he eventually recovered, fascinating the top medical doctors in Boston. And he is here right now to tell his story. Good morning, Jake.
Good morning. And you did do that medical term justice. Great pronunciation.
Did it? Well, this is unbelievable. And for those of us that knew Sean and saw him go through this, there's no one on the planet that can tell us what this is like besides you. This has got to be just mind-blowing that you're here today functioning and telling your story.
Yeah. Totally crazy that I'm able to verbalize with you two today and tell my story to the world. And that's why I'm here and doing this. So, yeah.
You were left in a coma-like state for 10 months. 10 months. And
10 months.
Your family, your wife, were they being told that pretty much you were brain dead and you would not be coming back?
Yeah, pretty much. So, a misconception is that I just got sick one day and I was like this. I was diagnosed with this terminal disease. It gave me 6 months to live, rode downhill. Everything they said would happen did happen. I lose function, stage 4, go into a coma-like state, and then pass away. So that's when locked in started. And I'm kind of like a fly on the wall, right? I'm just like laying in bed, can't move. And then I hear doctors telling my wife and family, he won't make it past Christmas.
Wow.
So I knew it was coming. And then I heard the term brain dead, and I was shocked at how I was perceived. And I even contemplated, am I brain dead? Is this just some hallucination? And then I quickly was like, well, I still have memories from my childhood. I know everything. I'm still, as smart as I was.
But you couldn't communicate it. So you're laying there in the hospital bed. You're hearing them say, well, sorry, Jake is brain dead. And you're going, no, I'm not. But you can't do anything about it, right? It's the only thing. Your eyes are open, but you can't react.
Correct. I had no reaction whatsoever. All I had was, the only control I had on my body was involuntary vertical eye movements. So my eyes weren't even like tracking. They just were in a positional gaze, and if they wanted to flutter, they would flutter. If they wanted to close, they would close, but typically they were open. And I've heard from people that I've spoken to that saw me in this state, it was quite scary to watch because of my eyes and what my body would do sometimes.
Well, speaking of the eye movement, I know that when I went to visit Sean Demery in the hospital, he was able to, use blinking as a form of yes or no. Were you even able to do that? It sounds like no.
No, I was not. So that is another kind of like locked in syndrome is so rare that a lot of things out in the media, they show folks that can blink and they call it locked in syndrome. I'm not like diminishing that by any means, but that is technically what it's called. Virtually locked in. It means like you can kind of blink for yes or no or a question to answer it. But yes, I had none of that for 10 months. And then I headed to that and then quickly became nonverbal in this slightest with the letterboard.
We're talking to Jake Handel, who is the only person to survive and come out of this locked-in syndrome. Can you describe the first moments when you realized that you were fully aware, but you were unable to move or communicate? And like, what's going through your mind? Is it like, help, 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 get me out? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, sheer panic. And I'll just tell you the quick story of when I realized that. So medical staff would come into my room in the neuro ICU and they would say, "Oh, good morning, Mr. Handel. I'm here to change your IV." All that kind of stopped. They would just come in and work on me. And I thought that was weird, but I didn't think much of it because I wasn't a big conversationalist. So I was like, whatever. Then 2 nurses are working on me. And one nurse says to the other, "I gotta tell you about this real awkward hookup I had last night." So internally, I'm like, this is the best story I've heard in like months.
Right.
And the other nurse says, giggling, "Maybe we shouldn't talk in front of the patient." And that's when she said, "Oh, him? No, don't worry. He's brain dead anyway. He can't hear you." So that was the moment where I was like, oh my God, this sound perceives sheer panic and really the highest anxiety beyond like having a terminal disease and days away from dying. This was really scary. And honestly, I'm like, how can this be? Like, I know I'm in this like quote unquote coma unit with several other folks like this. I know I can't be the only one talking to myself and screaming to myself in pain, physical and mental, by the way.
Jake, I'm so sorry that this happened to you. You described this because I often wondered what Sean was going through. It's very haunting what you said. Quote, "It was like being a prisoner in solitary confinement, but worse." That is a very, very scary description.
Well, just with you talking about it now, I can see the pain in you telling the story. This is like you're reliving it again.
Trying to shave my goosebumps right here, and my hair stands up.
I've got them too.
And I mean, every time it's not like I don't talk about this. Like, I talk about it quite often, as many people know. But yeah, every time it still does it to me. So yeah, it is painful, and it was just. So the solitary confinement part with like the element that made it worse is that it was also like being tortured because I was in so much physical and mental pain. They were actually probably equal. And the fact that you couldn't even let a scream out for some sort of release to be like,
oh, man.
Jake, I know that you are talking about this, which is helping other people. Can you tell people what were your symptoms before going to the hospital? Because this is really important.
Yeah. So, I was working as a head executive chef, kind of newly married. And the first thing I noticed was my voice was a little off. It was almost higher pitched. And that was about 2 weeks. And people would say, "What's up with your voice?" And then shortly after, now, my ex-wife, now wife at the time, I'd wake up in the morning to go to work, and she'd be like, "Are you drunk?" And I would be like, "No, it's 7 in the morning. What are you talking about?"
Wow.
And then it went from, I was always a good driver, maybe I had a heavy foot, but I noticed I started swerving a lot. Like in a short drive, there would be 3 times where I'd grab the wheel. And then after that, it was balance, slight. So I could like walk, but at night I would like hold the walls going down my hallway. And then finally I walked into the hospital, and yeah, they were actually about to discharge me. And then, my wife was like, "You can't do that. Let me play his voicemail." Played it, and they heard 2 different voices, and that's what made them admit me and find this rare disease.
So sorry this happened to you, Jake, but I'm so glad that you're on the other side and
Absolutely.
able to be here today, because you're truly an inspiration, I'm sure, to people listening right now. How can people connect with you and find you? I know you have an app called Ahoy.
I do. So I'm not hard to find. Miracle Man, no E 31 on all social platforms.
Okay.
And that's not because of my brain injury, the misspelling. That's because some other guy thinks he's a Miracle Man and took that username. But also you can reach out to my website, my accessibility technology company called Ahoy, with an I at the end of it, unique spelling. But just Googling my name, you can get in touch with me. And I'm really doing all this to help folks in all areas. I mean, I've been given a second chance at life here, and I'm using it to the fullest.
So impressive.
People reach out. Yeah.
Man. God bless you.
Ahoy is an app that helps users find places that best fit their accessibility needs, by the way. And the way you spell handle for Jake is Haendel. Jake, truly a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for coming on and telling us your story.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Thank you so much.
You got it. This is The Morning X. It is 99X.